Have you ever noticed how almost every conversation about personal growth or like achieving your ultimate potential, it always carries this really heavy, unspoken expectation of exhaustion?
Oh, absolutely. It feels like society has basically agreed that success has to be a grind.
Right. You visualize yourself constantly pushing this massive boulder up a steep hill,
Yeah.
and the underlying logic is basically, if you aren't completely drained at the end of the day, well, you must not be doing it right.
It's deeply ingrained in us, yeah. That relentless mentality where progress is only measured in blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
But then you observe certain individuals who seem to operate under a completely different set of physical laws.
People who just make it look effortless.
Exactly. They overcome these enormous obstacles and achieve massive things, yet they maintain this profound peace of mind. They glide. And looking at them, that boulder metaphor suddenly feels entirely inadequate.
Which means, we're likely operating with the wrong mechanics. And
Yeah.
that is exactly what we're dismantling for you today. Welcome to this deep dive.
It's going to be a good one.
Today, we're exploring a really fascinating set of notes focused entirely on human awareness, peace of mind, and the actual mechanics of personal transformation.
The nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission for you on this deep dive is to identify and fully shatter 6 specific invisible barriers that are secretly keeping you tied to that boulder.
And what makes this exploration so compelling is that, we're moving way past the superficial advice of just working harder.
Nobody needs to hear just work harder again.
Right. We are going to unpack some profound, almost physics-like principles that can allow you to bypass that cycle of exhaustion entirely.
So let's start by mapping the territory. These notes organize everything a human being can possibly know into 3 distinct buckets, or worldviews, which I actually found incredibly helpful for figuring out where we usually get stuck.
It's a great framework. The first bucket is the worldview. This is your tangible academic reality, right? Your general and specialized knowledge.
So like what we learn in school.
Exactly. It's the math, science, and history you learn in school or the technical skills you acquire for your career. The second bucket is the cosmological view.
Which is a lot bigger.
Yeah, it deals with religion, spirituality, the origins of the universe, and just our broader beliefs about existence itself.
And while both of those are important, obviously they don't necessarily dictate your day-to-day peace of mind.
Not usually, no.
Which brings us to the third bucket. And this is the entire focus of our deep dive today. The human life view. This is the intricate web of how we interact with each other, how we understand our own inner world, and how we navigate the daily friction of being alive.
And navigating that friction is where we get to the core of the exhaustion you mentioned earlier. There is a brilliant visual in these notes to illustrate how we usually handle the human life view.
The river analogy. I love this one.
Yes, imagine you are in a small boat on a river and you need to reach a destination. Most of us instinctively point our boat upstream.
We just paddle right into the current.
We try to force our way against the natural currents and principles of life.
And technically, you might eventually reach your destination going upstream, but the cost is immense. You have to row relentlessly. It requires continuous, agonizing effort.
It does. But the most insidious part of rowing upstream isn't even the effort. It's the precariousness of it all.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the moment your arms get tired, the moment you drop the oars to just take a single breath, the current immediately shoves you backward. All that progress is lost.
Oh, man. Yeah, puts you in a permanent state of low-level anxiety because resting literally feels like failing.
Precisely. But if you turn the boat around and go downstream, aligning yourself with those underlying principles, the entire experience transforms.
I just glide.
You glide. You reach the finish line effortlessly, sometimes barely even needing to steer. It begs the question, if gliding is so much easier, why do we instinctively choose to row upstream?
And what actually forces us to finally turn the boat around?
To answer that, the notes introduce the analogy of an egg. This really explains the physical mechanism of human transformation.
An egg.
Yeah, think about the structure of an egg. If it is broken by an outside force, say, cracked into a frying pan, it is consumed. It becomes food.
Okay.
But if that exact same egg is broken from the inside out through its own internal development, it becomes life.
Breaking from the inside out creates life. That is such a beautiful image. But let me challenge the necessity of breaking it all. What if you're comfortable?
Comfortable in the shell.
Right. The shell is cozy, you feel safe, and you just decide you don't really feel like doing the hard work to break out from the inside. Does the universe just eventually swing a hammer and force you to become food?
Unfortunately, yes. The progression described here is quite unforgiving if we remain entirely passive.
So it forces our hand.
It outlines an escalating cycle of pain designed to force a change in direction. It starts simply. You face a problem, a point of suffering. If you ignore it and refuse to adapt, life doesn't just let you be. It hands you greater suffering.
It essentially turns up the volume on the alarm.
Exactly. And if you still stubbornly cling to your old ways after that greater suffering, you experience actual loss.
Wow, so it keeps escalating.
It does. And if that loss doesn't trigger an internal shift, the final stage is profound, devastating loss. Transformation ultimately is inevitable. The only variable you control is the catalyst.
So we have to choose to change.
Mastering the human life view means triggering that change yourself, driven by love, vision, and a desire for growth, rather than waiting for devastation to act as the outside force that shatters your reality.
Which brings us to the absolute centerpiece of these notes. If we know the stakes are that high, and we actively want to break out from the inside and turn our boat downstream, what is physically stopping us?
The 6 barriers.
Right. The notes isolate 6 specific barriers. 6 invisible chains that completely paralyze human development.
And this is where you, listening to this, might recognize some very familiar patterns in your own life. These barriers don't announce themselves as enemies, right? They often masquerade as logic or common sense.
Oh, totally. Let's pull them apart, because just listing them doesn't really do justice to how deeply they embed themselves.
Let's do it.
Barrier number 1 is trivializing oneself. And this isn't just low self-esteem. It's that very specific, quiet voice that says, I'm just a normal person. Who am I to try and start a business or write a book or lead a team?
It's a preemptive surrender.
Yes, you defeat yourself before you even start.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where you don't even attempt the downstream journey because you've decided you aren't buoyant enough to float. Then you have barriers 2 and 3, which are intensely social.
The fear of failure and the fear of criticism.
Right. The fear of failure stops you from trying, and the fear of criticism.
The fear of criticism is fascinating to me because it paralyzes you, based entirely on an illusion.
How so?
Well, you're terrified of what other people might think or say, which means you are essentially being held hostage by imaginary conversations in your own head.
That is the ultimate energy drain. So those first 3 barriers are internal and social, but the next 3 shift to our relationship with the external world.
Okay, what's barrier 4?
Barrier number 4 is the fear of lacking conditions or resources. I don't have enough money or the right connections or enough free time to start.
And barrier 5?
Barrier 5 is the fear of lacking knowledge. I need another degree, another certification. I'm not a recognized expert yet, so I have to wait.
Now hold on, I have to push back hard on those 2.
Go for it.
Don't we need to be rational here? If I want to build a house, a fear of lacking conditions, like literally not having bricks, isn't that just acknowledging reality?
I see where you're going.
And a fear of lacking knowledge before, say, launching a complex tech startup, isn't that just being a responsible, prepared person?
It is incredibly compelling to view those fears as safety mechanisms. Our brains are actually hardwired to reward us for that kind of preparation.
It feels like the right thing to do.
But this raises a critical question. Are these fears actually keeping you safe, or are they just highly sophisticated excuses keeping you stuck? The notes offer a visual here that fundamentally alters how you view these 6 barriers.
Let's hear the visual.
Imagine a massive, state-of-the-art rocket sitting on a launch pad.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The engines are igniting, the thrust is building, the noise is deafening. There's an unbelievable amount of potential energy waiting to be unleashed.
Ready to launch.
But this rocket is anchored to the concrete by 6 heavy industrial steel chains. Those chains are the 6 barriers.
Oh, wow. So the fear of lacking knowledge isn't a safety checklist, it's a physical tether.
Precisely. As long as those 6 chains are attached, it absolutely does not matter how much fuel you burn, how many self-help books you read, or how loud your engines roar.
The rocket isn't going anywhere.
That rocket goes nowhere. It just violently vibrates, creates a lot of smoke, and slowly damages its own structural integrity from all the stress.
That perfectly mirrors the boat rowing upstream. Exhaustion with 0 forward momentum. The preparation actually becomes procrastination.
Exactly. You think you are being responsible by waiting until you have enough knowledge, but really, that chain is preventing you from the only type of learning that matters, which is learning by doing.
So true. And when you finally sever those 6 chains,
the result isn't a slow, incremental trudge up a hill. It is explosive, exponential growth. You achieve escape velocity. You leave that escalating cycle of suffering far behind.
Which brings us to the final barrier, right? Number 6.
Barrier 6 is lacking a clear vision for the future. If you cut the chains but have no trajectory, the rocket just crashes back to Earth.
Okay, the visual is undeniable. We have to sever these 6 chains. But if I'm sitting here analyzing my life, my logical brain says, all right, grab some heavy-duty bolt cutters. Today, I am going to aggressively tackle my fear of failure. Tomorrow, I will wrestle with my fear of criticism.
Which sounds incredibly practical. It's how most of us are taught to solve problems. But these notes argue that this direct, combative approach is entirely the wrong strategy.
Wait, why? If the chains are the problem, shouldn't I attack the chains?
Because doing so violates a core concept they call the principle of light.
The principle of light.
Yeah. Imagine you walk into a windowless, pitch-black room. Your objective is to make the room bright.
Okay.
If you apply the logic of attacking your problems directly, like of fighting your fear of failure head-on, you would grab a bucket and frantically try to scoop the darkness out of the room, tossing it into the hallway.
I would be scooping forever. That's absurd.
It's a physical impossibility. Yet, a 3-year-old child knows exactly how to solve this problem.
They just turn on the light.
They don't fight the darkness. They simply reach over, flip the switch, and turn on the light. The moment light is introduced, the darkness doesn't fight back. It just ceases to exist.
That is a staggering shift in perspective.
Yeah.
But let's ground this in reality because, life isn't a simple light switch.
Yeah.
If someone is dealing with a visceral, messy problem, say, their marriage is falling apart or their business is on the verge of bankruptcy, how does the principle of light actually apply?
To translate this into reality, the notes construct a model of a house to represent the human experience.
Okay, walk me through the house.
The foundation of your house is your inner self, your peace of mind. The 2 structural walls are your health and your relationships, and the roof sitting on top is your finances.
So, inner self at the bottom holding it all up, health and relationships on the sides, finance shielding the top.
Notice how a failure in one area compromises the entire structure.
Right, they're all connected.
If your foundation, your inner peace, is fractured by chronic anxiety, it creates stress that degrades the walls of your physical health and your relationships. Eventually, because you are sick and isolated, your financial roof caves in.
And the reverse is equally true, right? A sudden financial crisis on the roof leaks down, destroying your relationships through arguments, wrecking your health with stress, and completely flooding your inner peace.
Exactly. When that crisis hits, let's use the struggling marriage as an example. Our instinct is to grab the bucket. We focus obsessively on the darkness.
We fight the symptoms directly.
We argue over who does the dishes. We track every perceived slight. We are furiously scooping darkness out of the relationship corner of the house.
Yes, and because we are rowing upstream against natural principles, it is exhausting.
The notes argue that fixing problems directly guarantees a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. The darkness always rushes back in. You finally agree on a chore schedule, but then a financial problem pops up.
Then you fix the finances, but your physical health collapses.
Exactly.
So if chasing the problems with a bucket is futile, what is the equivalent of turning on the light in this house?
Instead of fighting the 6 barriers, your sole focus should be on illuminating 7 specific lamps within that house. These are called the 7 comprehensive wealths.
This is where we stop playing defense and go on the offense.
Correct. The 7 lamps are divided into 2 categories. First, we have the immaterial wealths, the invisible ones. Wisdom, mindset, personality, and character.
Okay, the immaterial.
Then we have the material wealths, the tangible ones, capacity, physical health, and material wealth itself.
The strategy is profound, really. By aggressively cultivating these 7 wealths, you flood your internal house with such an overwhelming amount of light that the 6 barriers, the fear, the lack of vision, the self-doubt, they literally cannot exist in the same space.
You don't cut the chains, you dissolve them with light.
I want to focus on this division between immaterial and material because there's a concept here about blending them that completely changed how I view value. It's called immaterializing the material.
It's a powerful concept.
Let me try an analogy to see if I'm unpacking this correctly.
Let's hear it.
Think about a standard generic canvas tote bag. From a purely material standpoint, it's just woven cotton and thread. It's functional, maybe worth $5. But if a renowned designer takes that exact same canvas bag and infuses it with immaterial elements like a rich brand history, a narrative about the artisan who stitched it, a limited edition story suddenly, The material value of that canvas skyrockets to thousands of dollars.
Exactly. The physical object didn't change, but the invisible meaning attached to it multiplied its worth exponentially.
That captures it perfectly. You elevate a physical object by breathing invisible value into it. And the revelation here is that we must apply this process to ourselves.
We have to immaterialize ourselves.
Yes. If you only focus on the material lamps, your physical health, your technical capacity, or just hoarding money, your value to the world is strictly capped.
But if you deeply cultivate the immaterial lamps, if you refine your wisdom, elevate your mindset, and forge an unbreakable character, your presence becomes incredibly magnetic. Your value in the eyes of society becomes immeasurable.
But the notes don't stop there. They also demand the exact reverse, materializing the immaterial, which honestly sounds like trying to hold smoke in your hands.
It does sound tricky.
How do you make an invisible concept physical?
Well, think about universal desires like happiness, peace, or love. They are completely abstract. If you ask a room full of people to hand you a cup of inner peace, they look at you blankly.
Right. It's just a feeling in the ether.
But if you want to actually transfer that peace to someone else, if you want to teach it or build a company culture around it, you have to make it tangible.
You have to ground it.
You must break it down into observable actions, daily habits, and specific criteria. You have to make the immaterial real enough that someone else can physically grasp it and replicate it.
It's like writing a precise recipe for an abstract emotion.
Exactly.
And a massive part of materializing those concepts, of keeping these lamps lit, comes down to our daily vocabulary. The notes introduce the language of light, which contrasts sharply with how most of us usually speak.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, the language of darkness focuses on the barriers. Imagine you are talking to a friend who is procrastinating on a health goal. The darkness language sounds like, if you keep eating like that and skipping the gym, you're going to end up with heart disease.
Oh, wow. You are scooping darkness there. You are pouring fear and negative outcomes directly into their mental room.
Exactly. But the language of light flips the trajectory entirely. You say, let's get your nutrition and training dialed in so you have the boundless energy to play with your kids and crush it at work.
The shift is subtle, but the energy is radically different.
It really is.
When you light the lamps of wisdom and mindset, your vocabulary organically changes. You stop articulating your anxieties and start speaking your vision into existence.
Which brings us to the most practical question for you, the listener. What do you actually do tomorrow morning? How do you proactively keep these lamps burning so you don't backslide into the darkness and let those heavy chains reattach themselves?
The notes offer a remarkably elegant daily framework called the principle of activating the brain.
Activating the brain. I like that.
It is a three-step habit: lesson, insight, and epiphany. By doing this daily, you generate your own internal momentum, completely bypassing the need for suffering to act as your catalyst.
So step one, the lesson. This means intentionally seeking out a piece of knowledge today that you did not possess yesterday.
It requires active curiosity rather than just letting the day wash over you.
Okay, step two.
Step two is the insight. This elevates the lesson from mere trivia to practical application. You must identify a specific way to apply that new knowledge to your life right now.
And step three is the epiphany.
Yes, this is the profound aha moment where that applied knowledge suddenly resolves a struggle or a question that has been haunting you in the past.
Lesson, insight, epiphany. It trains your reticular activating system to constantly hunt for the light instead of fixating on the shadows.
It does, because adversity and suffering generally only exist to force us to learn a lesson. If you proactively hunt down the lesson before the problem occurs, the adversity becomes obsolete.
The universe doesn't need to swing the hammer to break the egg.
Exactly. That connects beautifully to a tiered concept in these notes regarding human intelligence. We've all heard that smart people learn from their own failures.
Which is valid. Touching a hot stove and learning not to do it again is a form of intelligence.
But smarter people learn from the failures of others. They watch someone else touch the stove, and they absorb the lesson without suffering the burn.
Highly efficient.
But the smartest individuals, the ones operating with the highest level of human awareness, completely bypass failure altogether.
Wait, how do they do that?
They take the successes of others and use that as their own baseline. They absorb the light someone else has already generated, allowing them to scale massively without paying the toll of suffering.
And if we look at how this ultimate level of awareness impacts the most tangible part of our lives, the financial roof of our house, we uncover a brilliant, self-sustaining loop.
Yes, the financial loop. Acquiring material wealth is vital. It affords you better health care, it buys you the time to cultivate your inner peace, and it provides a stable environment for your relationships.
The roof protects the walls and the foundation.
But an enlightened, highly aware person doesn't hoard it. They use their financial and immaterial wealth to create massive social value. They solve problems for others. And according to the notes, when you create genuine value, you accumulate merit, a form of positive magnetic energy.
And that merit becomes the current of the river.
Exactly.
You generate so much value that financial resources flow back to you naturally, effortlessly. You aren't chasing money. Money is drawn to the light you are emitting.
You are finally gliding downstream, the oars are in the boat, the chains are gone, and the rocket is in orbit.
Man, let's synthesize everything we've unpacked here. The journey of human transformation doesn't have to be a grueling battle of pushing boulders or rowing upstream against the current.
It really doesn't.
When we find ourselves paralyzed by the 6 barriers trivializing our potential, fearing failure, fearing criticism, lacking conditions, lacking knowledge, or having no vision, our instinct is to fight those fears directly.
But fighting the darkness is a fool's errand. The key is applying the principle of light.
We stop swinging bolt cutters at the chains, and instead we aggressively cultivate the 7 lamps of comprehensive wealth within ourselves, right?
Yes, immaterializing our physical reality and materializing our deepest values.
By hunting for a daily lesson, insight, and epiphany, we break our own shell from the inside out, creating life, rather than waiting for the escalating pain of the universe to crack us open.
It requires a fundamental rewiring of how you perceive effort and growth. And it leaves us with a necessary and perhaps uncomfortable new lens through which to view the world around us.
What should we be looking at?
Well, we've talked entirely about turning on the light inside your own house, but look at the societal structures you interact with every day.
Like what?
Look at our healthcare system, which largely treats symptoms after the fact. Look at our political discourse, which thrives on fear and opposition. So much of our modern world is entirely built on the business of scooping darkness.
Wow. It profits off handing you a bucket.
Exactly. The provocative question for you to chew on is this. If you have committed to turning on the lights in your own life, which external systems are you still participating in that are secretly relying on you to stay in the dark?
That shifts the entire paradigm. Once you see the buckets, you can't unsee them. Take these mechanics, find your daily epiphany, and observe how your reality begins to glide. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Let us know how your perspective shifts when you finally drop